The air crackled with the kind of electricity that only comes when you're standing on the edge of something irreversible. Ezra Kane clutched the edge of his denim jacket, his heart pounding as he stood in the middle of his family's crowded living room in their San Francisco Victorian home. He'd rehearsed the words 1,000 times, but now, with every eye on him, they felt like stones in his throat. "I'm gay," he said, his voice cutting through the hum of conversation. The room fell silent, Forks pausing midair, his mother's wine glass frozen at her lips. His twin brother, Ethan, stood by the fireplace, his fiancée, Lila, clinging to his arm. Ezra's eyes flicked to her, then to Ethan, whose face was unreadable, a mask of shock or something darker. "I've known for years," Ezra continued, his voice steadier now, though his hands shook. "I don't want to hide anymore. Not from you, not from myself." He scanned the room, his parents, his aunts, his cousins, all staring, some with warmth, others with confusion or disapproval. But it was Ethan's gaze, sharp and unyielding, that cut the deepest. Ethan, his mirror image, his other half, who'd always known him better than anyone. Or so Ezra thought. The silence broke when Lila stepped forward, her smile soft but strained. "Ezra, that's brave. We're here for you." Her words were kind, but they felt hollow, like she was reading from a script. Ethan said nothing, just turned to the fire, his jaw tight. Ezra's chest ached. He'd hoped for more from his brother, his best friend. But the room moved on, conversations restarting, his confession swallowed by the clink of glasses and forced laughter. That night, Ezra lay awake in his childhood bedroom, the city's fog curling outside the window. He'd done it. He'd ripped the bandage off, bared his soul. So why did he feel so alone? His phone buzzed. A text from his best friend, Marcus, who'd been his rock through months of wrestling with this moment. "Proud of you, man. You're free now." Ezra wanted to believe it, but freedom felt like a bruise, tender and raw. The next morning, the house buzzed with a different kind of energy. Ethan and Lila were planning their engagement party, a lavish affair set for the weekend at a winery in Napa. Ezra's parents were thrilled, their focus shifting seamlessly from his coming out to the upcoming celebration. "It's going to be beautiful," his mother said over breakfast, her eyes sparkling as she described the floral arrangements. Ezra nodded, forcing a smile, but his mind was elsewhere, on the way Ethan had avoided him all morning, on the ache of being seen but not truly heard. Marcus showed up at noon, his bright grin a lifeline. "You survived the big reveal," he said, tossing Ezra coffee as they walked through the Mission District, the streets alive with murals and the scent of fresh tortillas. Marcus was black, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that could fill a room. He'd come out to his own family years ago, and though it hadn't been easy, he wore his truth like armor. "How's it feel?" he asked. "Like I jumped off a cliff, and I'm still falling," Ezra admitted. He kicked a pebble down the sidewalk, his dark hair falling into his eyes. Ethan didn't say a word. Not one. I thought he'd, at least I don't know, hug me or something. Marcus frowned, sipping his coffee. Give him time. Twins are weird. He's probably processing. But Ezra wasn't so sure. Ethan had always been the golden child, confident, charming, the one who made their parents proud with his law school ambitions and perfect fiancé. Ezra, quieter and more introspective, had always felt like the shadow. Coming out was supposed to change that, to let him step into his own light. Instead, it felt like he'd cast a shadow over Ethan's perfect life. The week blurred by, each day a countdown to the engagement party. Ezra threw himself into helping, hoping it would bridge the gap with Ethan. He ran errands, picked up decorations, even helped Lila choose a playlist. She was kind, her southern accent warm as she thanked him, but there was a distance in her eyes, like she was holding something back. Ethan, meanwhile, was a ghost, always busy, always elsewhere, his text to Ezra curt and vague. On Thursday, 2 days before the party, Ezra found Ethan alone in the backyard, stringing fairy lights across the pergola. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of peach and violet. Ezra took a deep breath and approached, his sneakers crunching on the gravel. "Need a hand?" he asked. Ethan glanced up, his face softening for a moment before hardening again. "I'm good." Ezra's heart sank, but he pressed on. "Look, I know things have been weird since, I just want us to be okay. You're my brother." Ethan set down the lights, his hands flexing at his sides. "It's not about you being gay, Ezra," he said, his voice low. "It's about you dropping this bomb right before my engagement party. Did you even think about how it'd affect me? Lila? Mom and Dad?" Ezra blinked, stunned. "I wasn't trying to steal your thunder. I just couldn't keep lying." "Yeah, well, timing matters," Ethan snapped. He turned away, his shoulders rigid. "Just let me focus on this, okay?" Ezra stood there, the words he wanted to say, "I needed you, I needed my brother," stuck in his throat. He walked away, the fairy lights twinkling mockingly behind him. By Friday, the tension was a living thing, coiling tighter with every hour. Ezra helped set up the winery, his hands busy, but his mind racing. Marcus texted him nonstop, trying to keep his spirits up, but the hurt lingered. Why was Ethan so angry? Why couldn't he see how much this had cost Ezra? The night before the party, Ezra overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. He was in the winery's kitchen, grabbing extra napkins, when Lila's voice drifted through the cracked door. "I just don't understand why he had to do it now," she said, her tone sharp. "It's like he's trying to make this about him." "He's not," Ethan replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "He's just Ezra, always overthinking, always needing to be seen." Ezra's breath caught. He leaned against the wall, the napkins forgotten in his hands. Was that what Ethan thought? That he was attention-seeking? The words cut deeper than any silence, slicing through years of shared memories. Late-night talks, shared secrets, the unspoken bond of being twins. He slipped out of the kitchen, his chest tight, and found Marcus waiting by the vineyard's edge, the rows of grapes stretching into the darkness. "You okay?" Marcus asked, his eyes searching Ezra's face. "No," Ezra whispered. "I don't think I am." Marcus pulled him into a hug, his warmth grounding Ezra against the storm in his chest. "You don't need their approval to be you," Marcus said fiercely. "You're enough." Ezra clung to those words, but as the engagement party loomed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break, something bigger than he could imagine. The vineyard glowed under a canopy of stars, the engagement party in full swing. Tables draped in white linen shimmered with candlelight, and laughter mingled with the clink of champagne glasses. Ezra stood on the fringes, a glass of untouched wine in his hand, watching Ethan and Lila dance in the center of the crowd. They moved like they were made for each other, her dress swirling, his smile wide and effortless. Ezra's heart twisted. He was happy for them, where he wanted to be, but the ache in his chest wouldn't let go. Marcus nudged his shoulder, his voice low. "You're brooding again." Ezra forced a smile, just taking it all in. "Bullshit," Marcus said, but his tone was gentle. "You're thinking about Ethan. Let it go for tonight, man. This is their moment." Ezra nodded, but his eyes kept drifting to his brother. Ethan hadn't spoken to him since their argument in the backyard, and the distance between them felt like a chasm. He scanned the crowd, his parents mingling with guests, his cousins laughing by the dessert table, Lila's family from Georgia adding their drawl to the mix. Everyone seemed so whole, like they belonged. Ezra felt like an outsider in his own family, his confession hanging over him like a storm cloud. Then he saw her, Jade, his ex-girlfriend from college, weaving through the crowd in a sleek emerald dress. His stomach dropped. He hadn't seen her in 2 years, not since their breakup, when he'd realized he couldn't keep pretending to be someone he wasn't. She'd been kind then, heartbroken but understanding, and they'd parted on good terms. So why was she here? Jade spotted him and made her way over, her smile warm but cautious. "Ezra," she said, pulling him into a quick hug. "It's been forever." "Yeah," he managed, his throat tight. "What are you doing here?" Her smile faltered as she glanced toward Ethan and Lila, still dancing. Ethan invited me. Said it'd be nice to catch up, since we're all family adjacent. Ezra's pulse quickened. Ethan had invited her. Why? Before he could ask, Jade's eyes softened, and she touched his arm. I heard about you coming out. That's huge, Ezra. I'm proud of you. The words were a balm, but they didn't erase the unease curling in his gut. Thanks, he said. It's been a lot. She nodded, her gaze lingering on him. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. I mean it. Before he could respond, Ethan appeared, his arm around Lila. Jade, he said, his voice bright but edged with something Ezra couldn't place. Glad you made it. Jade smiled, but her eyes flicked between the twins, sensing the tension. Wouldn't miss it, she said. You two look happy. Lila beamed, but Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. He clapped Ezra on the shoulder, a gesture that felt more performative than genuine. Ezra's been a huge help with all this, he said, his tone clipped. Right, bro? Ezra nodded, his jaw tight. Sure. The moment stretched, awkward and heavy, until Lila pulled Ethan back to the dance floor. Jade watched them go, then turned to Ezra. You okay? She asked quietly. He wanted to tell her everything, the hurt, the confusion, the way Ethan's silence was eating him alive. But the words wouldn't come. I'm fine, he lied, and she didn't press. As the night wore on, Ezra drifted through the party, a ghost in his own life. Marcus stayed close, cracking jokes to lighten the mood, but even his warmth couldn't fill the void. Then, near midnight, the music slowed, and Ethan took the microphone, his voice carrying over the crowd. I want to thank you all for being here, he said, his arm around Lila. This is a night we'll never forget. But it's not just about us. It's about family, about love, about building something real. Ezra's throat tightened. He wanted to believe Ethan meant it, that family included him. But then Ethan's eyes found his, and there was no warmth there, only a flicker of something that looked like guilt. The crowd cheered, toasting to love and family, but Ezra felt the words like a blade. He slipped away, finding solace in the vineyard's quiet rows, the cool night air soothing his burning skin. Marcus followed, his presence steady as ever. You can't keep running from this, Marcus said, his voice soft but firm. Talk to him. Really talk. Ezra shook his head, his eyes stinging. He doesn't want to hear it. He's made that clear. Then make him, Marcus said. He's your brother. He owes you that much. Ezra wanted to argue, but the truth was he was tired of hiding, tired of hoping, tired of feeling like he was losing the one person who'd always been his anchor. He nodded, resolve hardening in his chest. Tomorrow, he'd confront Ethan. No more silence. But the next morning, everything changed. Ezra woke to chaos. His phone buzzed with notifications, his mother's voice echoing from downstairs, sharp with panic. He stumbled out of bed, still in his clothes from the night before, and found his parents in the living room, their faces pale. Ethan stood by the window, his back to them, while Lila sat on the couch, her eyes red from crying. What's going on? Ezra asked, his voice hoarse. His mother looked at him, her lips trembling. It's Jade, she said. She and Ethan, they're getting married. Today. Ezra froze, the words not computing. What? Lila's voice broke as she spoke. Last night, after the party, Ethan and Jade, they reconnected. They've been talking for months, apparently. And now they're eloping. In front of everyone. Ezra's eyes snapped to Ethan, who still wouldn't look at him. Ethan, he said, his voice shaking. What the hell? Ethan turned, his face a storm of emotions. Guilt, defiance, something unreadable. It just happened, Ezra. I didn't plan it. You didn't plan it? Ezra's voice rose, disbelief crashing through him. You're marrying my ex-girlfriend? Days after I came out? In front of our family. It's not about you. Ethan snapped, but his voice cracked, betraying him. Jade and I, we've always had something. You moved on. I thought you were okay. Ezra laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Okay. You think I'm okay with this? His mother stepped between them, her hands raised. Enough. This is a family. We'll figure it out. But Ezra wasn't listening. He turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. The world blurred as he stumbled down the street, the weight of Ethan's betrayal crushing him. Jade, his Jade, the one he'd loved before he understood himself, was marrying his brother. And Ethan, his twin, his other half, had kept it from him. He found himself at Marcus's apartment, banging on the door until Marcus opened it, his face shifting from confusion to concern. Ezra, what? They're getting married, Ezra choked out. Ethan and Jade. Today. Marcus pulled him inside, his arm strong and steady as Ezra broke, the tears he'd held back for days finally spilling over. I've lost him, Ezra whispered. I've lost my brother. Marcus held him tighter. You haven't lost me, he said, and you're not alone. But as Ezra clung to Marcus, the pain of Ethan's betrayal burned brighter than any comfort. The wedding was happening, and he didn't know if he could face it or if he could ever forgive his brother. The morning sun was too bright, too cheerful for the storm raging in Ezra's chest. He sat on Marcus's couch, a cold cup of coffee in his hands, staring at the text from his mother. The wedding's at noon. St. Mary's Chapel. Please come, Ezra. We're family. He wanted to throw his phone across the room, but instead, he just sat there, numb, as Marcus watched him from the kitchen. You don't have to go, Marcus said, leaning against the counter. You don't owe them anything. Ezra's eyes burned, but he shook his head. If I don't go, it's like I'm running away. Like I'm ashamed. He swallowed hard. I'm not ashamed. Marcus crossed the room and sat beside him, his presence a quiet anchor. Then go. But do it for you, not for them. Show them who you are. Ezra nodded, though his stomach churned at the thought of facing Ethan, Jade, and the entire family. He didn't know what hurt more, the fact that Ethan was marrying Jade or that he'd hidden it, letting Ezra believe they were still brothers who shared everything. The betrayal was a knife, twisting deeper with every thought. By 11, Ezra was dressed in a dark blazer and jeans, his hair still a mess from running his hands through it. Marcus drove him to St. Mary's, a small chapel nestled in the hills, its stained glass windows glowing like jewels in the sunlight. The parking lot was packed, cars spilling onto the street, a testament to the Kane family's wide circle. Ezra's heart pounded as he stepped out, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and anticipation. Inside, the chapel was a flurry of activity, guests in suits and dresses, flowers lining the pews, a string quartet playing softly. Ezra spotted his parents near the altar, their faces tight with forced smiles. Lila was there too, standing alone by a window, her eyes distant. She caught his gaze and offered a small nod, but it felt like pity, and Ezra looked away. Then he saw them, Ethan and Jade, standing at the front, laughing with the officiant. Jade looked radiant in a simple white dress, her hair swept up, and Ethan was every inch the golden boy in his tailored suit. They looked happy, like a couple who'd planned this for years, not days. Ezra's chest tightened, a mix of anger and grief threatening to choke him. He found a seat in the back, Marcus beside him, and tried to focus on the music, the flowers, anything but the ache in his heart. The ceremony began, and Ethan and Jade stood hand in hand, their vows soft but clear. Ezra's eyes burned as Jade spoke of love and trust, words that felt like they belonged to him once in a different life. Ethan's vows were shorter, but his voice trembled, and for a moment, Ezra thought he saw his brother glance his way, a flicker of something, regret, maybe, in his eyes. When the officiant pronounced them married, the chapel erupted in applause, but Ezra couldn't move. Marcus squeezed his hand, grounding him, but the world felt like it was spinning out of control. As the guests filed out for the reception, Ezra stayed seated, staring at the altar where his brother had just married his ex. You okay? Marcus whispered. No, Ezra admitted, his voice barely audible. But I'm here. Marcus nodded, his eyes fierce with pride. That's enough for now. Outside, the reception was set up under a massive oak tree, tables laden with food and wine, fairy lights twinkling as the sun began to set. Ezra forced himself to mingle, accepting hugs and small talk from relatives, but every smile felt like a lie. He avoided Ethan and Jade, keeping his distance, until his mother pulled him aside. "Ezra, please," she said, her eyes pleading. "Talk to Ethan. He's your brother. This doesn't change that, doesn't it?" Ezra asked, his voice sharp. "He didn't tell me, Mom. He let me find out like this." She sighed, her hand on his arm. "He's struggling too. Give him a chance." Ezra wanted to argue, but the exhaustion in her face stopped him. He nodded, not because he agreed, but because he didn't have the energy to fight. He found Ethan by the bar, alone for once, pouring himself a drink. "Ezra," Ethan said, startled, nearly spilling his whiskey. "I didn't think you'd come." "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises," Ezra said, his voice cold. "Like you." Ethan flinched, setting the glass down. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Jade and I just—" "Don't." Ezra cut him off. "Don't say it just happened. You've been talking to her for months. You invited her to your engagement party. You planned this." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "I didn't know how to tell you. After you came out, I thought it'd make things worse." Ezra laughed, a bitter sound that drew eyes from nearby guests. "Worse? Ethan, you married my ex-girlfriend in front of our family, days after I told you I'm gay. How does it get worse than that?" Ethan's face crumpled, and for the first time, Ezra saw the weight his brother was carrying. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I love her, Ezra. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," Ezra said, his voice trembling. "You're my brother. You were supposed to have my back." Ethan reached for him, but Ezra stepped back, the space between them a wall he couldn't cross. He turned and walked away, the music and laughter fading into a dull roar. Marcus was waiting by the car, his eyes soft with understanding. "Let's get out of here," Marcus said, opening the door. Ezra nodded, sliding into the passenger seat, the weight of the day pressing down on him. As they drove back to the city, the hills blurring past, Ezra felt the first stirrings of something new. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a resolve to keep going, to find his own path, even if it meant leaving Ethan behind. Back at Marcus's apartment, they sat on the balcony, the city sprawling below them, alive with lights and possibility. Marcus handed Ezra a beer, his voice quiet. "You did good today. You showed up." Ezra took a sip, the cold liquid grounding him. "I don't know what comes next," he admitted. Marcus leaned back, his eyes on the stars. "You don't have to. Just keep being you. The rest will figure itself out." Ezra wanted to believe him, but the pain of Ethan's betrayal was still raw, a wound that would take time to heal. For now, he had Marcus, the city, and the truth he'd fought so hard to claim. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. The days after the wedding were a blur of silence and routine. Ezra threw himself into his job at a small graphic design firm in a mission, losing himself in color palettes and deadlines. The work was a lifeline, a way to keep his mind off Ethan, Jade, and the family that felt fractured beyond repair. But every night, when the city quieted and he was alone in his apartment, the hurt came rushing back. Marcus was relentless, dragging Ezra out for coffee, tacos, or late-night walks along the Embarcadero. "You can't hide in your sketchbooks forever," he said one evening, tossing a fry at Ezra as they sat at a diner. "You've got to feel this shit, man. Let out." Ezra caught the fry, forcing a grin. "What? You want me to cry in public?" "If that's what it takes," Marcus said, his eyes serious. "You're carrying too much. It's going to break you if you don't let it go." Ezra knew he was right, but letting go felt like losing the last piece of his brother. He and Ethan had always been two halves of a whole, twins who finished each other's sentences, who knew each other's fears without speaking. Now, Ethan was a stranger, and the loss was a physical ache, like a limb had been torn away. A week after the wedding, Ezra's mother called, her voice tentative. "We're having a family dinner this weekend," she said. "Just us. Ethan and Jade will be there. I'd love for you to come." Ezra's first instinct was to say no, to protect himself from more pain. But something in her tone, hope, maybe, or desperation made him pause. "I'll think about it," he said, and hung up before she could press. He spent the next few days wrestling with the decision, sketching furiously to keep his mind occupied. His latest project was a poster for a local Pride event, and as he worked on the design, a vibrant collage of faces and flags, he felt a spark of something like hope. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe he could build a life that wasn't defined by Ethan's choices. Saturday came, and Ezra found himself driving to his parents' house, his stomach knotted with nerves. Marcus had offered to come, but Ezra needed to do this alone. He pulled up to the familiar Victorian, its windows glowing warmly, and took a deep breath before walking inside. The dining room was set with his mother's best china, the air thick with the scent of roasted chicken and rosemary. His parents were there, along with his younger sister, Ava, who rushed to hug him. "I missed you," she whispered, her eyes bright with tears. "Missed you too," Ezra said, his voice catching. Ava had always been his ally, the one who never judged, and her warmth was a small comfort. Ethan and Jade arrived last, their hands linked, their smiles cautious. Ezra's chest tightened, but he forced himself to nod in greeting. Dinner began, and the conversation was stilted, filled with safe topics: work, weather, Ava's college plans. But the tension was palpable, a current running beneath every word. Halfway through the meal, Jade cleared her throat, her eyes on Ezra. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I should have told you about Ethan and me. It wasn't fair to blindside you." Ezra froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. He hadn't expected this, not from her. "Why didn't you?" he asked, his voice quieter than he intended. Jade glanced at Ethan, who looked away, his jaw tight. "I thought it'd be easier if we just moved forward," she said. "I was wrong. I'm sorry, Ezra." He wanted to be angry, to let the hurt spill out, but her sincerity disarmed him. "I appreciate that," he said, and he meant it, though the pain didn't vanish. Ethan stayed silent, his eyes fixed on his plate. Ezra's mother tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but Ava, ever the firecracker, wasn't having it. "Ethan, you gonna say anything?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You're acting like this is all normal." Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes flashing. "What do you want me to say, Ava? That I screwed up? I'm sorry." He turned to Ezra, his voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt you. I love her." Ezra's throat burned. "You keep saying that, but you didn't trust me enough to tell me. That's what hurts." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them. Ethan's eyes glistened, but he didn't speak. Finally, Ezra's father cleared his throat. "We're family," he said, his voice firm. "We'll get through this. Together." Ezra wanted to believe him, but the rift between him and Ethan felt too wide, too deep. After dinner, he stepped onto the porch, needing air, needing space. To his surprise, Ethan followed. "I don't know how to fix this," Ethan said, his voice low, almost lost in the night air. "I keep replaying it, wondering what I could have done differently." Ezra turned, his anger flaring. "You could have talked to me. You could have been my brother." Ethan flinched, but he didn't back down. "I was scared, okay? Scared you'd hate me. Scared I'd lose you." "You already did," Ezra said, the words cutting deeper than he meant. Ethan's face crumpled, and for a moment, they were just boys again, twins sharing a world no one else could touch. "I'm trying," Ethan whispered. "I'll keep trying." Ezra nodded, not trusting himself to speak. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something, a crack in the wall between them. He drove home that night, the city lights blurring through his tears, and for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back. Weeks turned into months, and Ezra settled into a new rhythm. His work at the design firm flourished, his Pride poster earning praise and a small feature in a local magazine. Marcus was a constant, their friendship deepening into something Ezra couldn't quite name, a warmth that felt like home, even when everything else was uncertain. Ethan and Jade sent occasional texts, small gestures of reconciliation, an invitation to coffee, a photo of their new apartment. Ezra responded politely but kept his distance, the wound still too fresh. He threw himself into the city's vibrant LGBT community, attending events, meeting new people, and finding solace in shared stories. It was at a drag show in the Castro that he met Leo, a photographer with a quick smile and eyes that saw through Ezra's carefully built walls. "You've got a story," Leo said one night, his camera slung around his neck as they shared drinks at a dimly lit bar. "I can see it in your sketches." Ezra laughed, surprised by how easy it felt to talk to him. "What? My doodles tell you my life story." "Pretty much," Leo said, his grin infectious. "They're raw, honest. Like you." The compliment stayed with Ezra, warming him through the cool San Francisco nights. He and Leo started spending more time together, shooting photos in Golden Gate Park, grabbing late-night burritos, talking about everything from art to identity. Leo was out and proud, his confidence a quiet strength that Ezra envied. "How do you do it?" Ezra asked one day, as they sat on a bench overlooking the bay. "How do you just be yourself? No apologies?" Leo shrugged, his eyes on the water. "Took a lot of falling to get here. But once you stop caring what people think, it's like you can finally breathe." Ezra wanted that freedom, but Ethan's betrayal still lingered, a shadow he couldn't shake. He told Leo about it one night, the words spilling out over glasses of wine in Leo's tiny apartment. Leo listened, his hand resting lightly on Ezra's, and when Ezra finished, he leaned in, his voice soft. "You're not defined by what he did. You're bigger than that." Ezra's breath caught, the weight of Leo's words sinking in. For the first time, he felt seen, not as Ethan's twin, not as Jade's ex, but as himself. When Leo kissed him, it was gentle, tentative, and Ezra let himself lean into it, the world falling away. But the past wasn't done with him. A month later, Ava called, her voice urgent. "Ezra, you need to come home." "It's Ethan." Panic gripped him. "Is he okay?" "He's fine," Ava said quickly. "But he's a mess. He and Jade, they're fighting. Bad. He needs you." Ezra's first instinct was to say no, to protect the fragile peace he'd built. But Ava's plea echoed in his mind, and he found himself driving to Ethan's apartment, his heart pounding. When Ethan opened the door, he looked wrecked, eyes red, hair disheveled, a shadow of the golden boy. "Thanks for coming," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know who else to call." They sat on the couch, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the city outside. Ethan told him everything, how he and Jade were struggling, how the weight of their rushed marriage was crushing them, how he missed his brother. "I fucked up, Ezra," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I could have it all, Jay, the life I planned. But I lost you." Ezra's throat tightened, the anger he'd carried for months warring with the love he still felt. "You hurt me," he said. "You made me feel like I didn't matter." "You do," Ethan said, his eyes pleading. "You always have. I was selfish, scared. I'm so sorry." Ezra wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the pain, but seeing Ethan so broken softened something in him. "I don't know if I can trust you again," he said honestly, "but I want to try." Ethan nodded, tears spilling over. "That's all I'm asking." They talked for hours, peeling back layers of hurt and misunderstanding. It wasn't a fix, not yet, but it was a start. When Ezra left, the city felt different, brighter, somehow like the fog had lifted just a little. He drove to Leo's, needing to share the weight of the night. Leo listened, his hand in Ezra's, and when Ezra finished, he smiled. "You're stronger than you think," Leo said. "You faced him. That's huge." Ezra leaned against him, the warmth of Leo's presence grounding him. "I'm trying," he said, echoing Ethan's words. And for the first time, he believed he could. Spring bloomed across San Francisco, the city alive with color and possibility. Ezra's life was finding its rhythm. Work, friends, Leo. Their relationship was new, fragile, but it grew stronger with every shared moment, every late-night talk. Leo's confidence, his unapologetic joy, was a light Ezra hadn't realized he needed. They spent weekends exploring the city, from hidden bookstores in North Beach to quiet trails in Marin, each moment stitching Ezra's heart back together. But Ethan was never far from his thoughts. They'd started texting again, small steps toward rebuilding what they'd lost. Ethan and Jade were in counseling, trying to navigate the cracks in their marriage. Ezra didn't ask for details. It was still too raw, but he listened when Ethan needed to talk, and slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. One afternoon, Ezra got a call from his mother. "We're planning a family barbecue," she said, her voice bright but cautious. "Everyone's coming. Ethan, Jade, Ava, cousins. It'd mean a lot if you were there." Ezra hesitated, memories of the wedding flashing through his mind. But he was tired of running, tired of letting the past define him. "I'll be there," he said. "Can I bring someone?" His mother's pause was brief, but he heard the smile in her voice. Of course. The barbecue was at Golden Gate Park, the air filled with the scent of grilled burgers and blooming flowers. Ezra arrived with Leo, their hands brushing as they walked across the grass. His family was already there, sprawled across picnic tables, laughing and arguing like always. Ava spotted him first, sprinting over to throw her arms around him. "You brought a date," she whispered, her eyes sparkling as she sized up Leo. "Behave," Ezra muttered, but he couldn't hide his grin. Ethan and Jade were there, sitting close but not touching, their smiles tentative. Ezra introduced Leo, and to his relief, Ethan shook his hand, his expression warm if a little guarded. "Good to meet you," Ethan said, and Ezra saw the effort it took, the olive branch extended. The afternoon unfolded with surprising ease. Leo charmed everyone with his stories and quick wit, fitting into the chaos of the Kane family like he'd always been there. Ezra watched him, a warmth spreading through his chest, and for the first time in months, he felt like he belonged. Later, as the sun dipped low, Ethan pulled Ezra aside, a beer in his hand. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice soft. "And I'm glad you brought Leo. He's good for you." Ezra nodded, his throat tight. "Thanks. I'm trying to move forward, you know." "I know," Ethan said. "I'm trying too. I want us to be brothers again." Ezra looked at him, really looked, and saw the boy he'd grown up with, the one who'd shared his secrets, his fears, his dreams. "We will be," he said, and for the first time he believed it. As the barbecue wound down, Leo slipped his hand into Ezra's, their fingers intertwining. "You okay?" Leo asked, his eyes searching. "Yeah," Ezra said, and he meant it. The pain was still there, a scar that might never fully fade, but it didn't define him anymore. He was building something new, a life that was his, filled with love, truth, and the people who saw him for who he was. That night, as he and Leo walked back to the car, the city lights sparkling below, Ezra felt a weight lift. He wasn't just Ethan's twin, or Jade's ex, or the guy who came out. He was Ezra, artist, friend, partner, brother. And for the first time, that was enough. A year later, Ezra stood on the rooftop of a gallery in Soma, his artwork displayed on the walls below. The Pride poster had led to a solo show, a collection of sketches and paintings that told his story. Coming out, losing Ethan, finding himself. The room buzzed with people, their voices mingling with the soft jazz playing in the background. Leo was by his side, his camera capturing candid moments, his smile a quiet promise. Ezra's family was there too. His parents, Ava, even Ethan and Jade. Their marriage was still a work in progress, but they were trying, and Ezra respected that. He and Ethan had spent months rebuilding, meeting for coffee, talking late into the night. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. As the night wore on, Ezra stepped onto the rooftop, needing a moment to breathe. The city stretched out before him, a tapestry of light and life. Leo joined him, slipping an arm around his waist. "Proud of you," he said, his voice warm. Ezra leaned into him, the weight of the past year settling into something softer, something hopeful. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. Leo laughed, kissing his temple. "Sure you could have, but I'm glad I'm here." Below, Ezra's paintings told a story of pain, love, and resilience. They were his truth, raw and unfiltered, and the people who saw them, his family, his friends, strangers, saw him too. Ethan approached, his expression soft, and for a moment, it was just the two of them, twins against the world. "You did good," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see you." Ezra smiled, his eyes stinging. "You're here now." They stood together, the city humming around them, and Ezra felt the pieces of his life fall into place. He'd come out, faced betrayal, and found love, not just with Leo, but with himself. The road had been hard, but it had led him here, to a rooftop under the stars, surrounded by the people who mattered. As the night ended, Ezra took Leo's hand, his heart full. He'd lost so much, but he'd gained more, a life that was his, a love that was true, and a brother who was finally learning to be his brother again. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was meaningful, and for Ezra, that was everything.